Question 1. The analysis reveals that a financial services organization is migrating a critical application to a hybrid cloud environment. The organization's internal security policy, mandated by the relevant financial regulatory bodies, requires strict network segmentation and granular access control for all sensitive customer data, regardless of its physical or virtual location. The current on-premises network utilizes a mature network virtualization platform with robust micro-segmentation capabilities. The chosen public cloud provider offers its own set of security and networking services. The IT team is tasked with implementing an automation strategy to ensure that the network segmentation and access control policies are consistently enforced across both the on-premises data center and the public cloud, without introducing new security vulnerabilities or compliance gaps. Which of the following automation strategies best addresses this challenge while adhering to the regulatory framework? Option A. Focus automation efforts on application deployment speed and agility, deferring the complex task of unified network policy enforcement to a later phase after the initial migration is complete. Option B. Rely solely on the native security and networking features of the public cloud provider, assuming they meet the organization's security requirements and will automatically align with on-premises policies. Option C. Implement a software-defined networking (SDN) overlay solution that provides a unified policy management plane capable of extending network virtualization and security policies across both on-premises and public cloud environments. Option D. Automate the provisioning of network infrastructure in both environments independently, with separate teams managing security policies for each, and conduct periodic manual audits to ensure compliance. The correct answer is C. Implement a software-defined networking (SDN) overlay solution that provides a unified policy management plane capable of extending network virtualization and security policies across both on-premises and public cloud environments. Explanation. The analysis reveals a common implementation challenge in data center virtualization and automation, ensuring consistent and secure network segmentation across a hybrid cloud environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing agility and rapid deployment with stringent security policies and compliance requirements. The complexity arises from managing disparate control planes, varying API capabilities, and the potential for misconfigurations that could lead to security breaches or compliance violations. Careful judgment is required to select an automation strategy that is both effective and adheres to the established regulatory framework for data center operations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a unified policy enforcement mechanism that can be applied consistently across both on-premises and cloud environments. This ensures that security controls, such as micro-segmentation and access control lists, are not compromised by the transition to or operation within a hybrid cloud. Adherence to the regulatory framework, which mandates data protection and secure network configurations, is achieved through this consistent application of policy, minimizing the attack surface and preventing unauthorized access. This proactive and integrated approach is crucial for maintaining compliance and operational integrity. An incorrect approach that relies solely on native cloud provider security controls without a unified overlay would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of centralized visibility and control, creating potential gaps in security policy enforcement. Such an approach could lead to regulatory failures by not meeting the mandated standards for data segregation and access control across the entire data center footprint. Another incorrect approach, focusing only on automating network provisioning without integrating security policy, would also be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This oversight neglects the fundamental requirement to secure data and infrastructure, potentially exposing sensitive information and violating compliance mandates. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the regulatory requirements and the specific security posture needed for the data center. This should be followed by an assessment of available automation tools and their capabilities for enforcing unified policies across hybrid environments. The chosen solution must demonstrably meet compliance obligations and provide robust security, rather than prioritizing speed or cost alone. A risk-based approach, considering the potential impact of misconfigurations or security vulnerabilities, is essential in selecting the most appropriate and compliant automation strategy. Question 2. Implementation of a critical automation script designed to manage virtual machine snapshots has encountered an unexpected error, causing a backlog of unsnapshotted virtual machines. The business is experiencing significant pressure to restore normal operations immediately. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this situation while adhering to best practices in data center virtualization and automation? Option A. Attempt to manually fix the existing script in the production environment to resolve the error quickly, without formal change control. Option B. Halt the current automation script, document the error, implement a temporary manual workaround for critical VMs, and then proceed with a thoroughly tested and approved revised script in a staged rollout. Option C. Advise management to temporarily disable all virtual machine snapshotting until the issue can be fully investigated and a permanent solution developed. Option D. Immediately deploy a revised version of the automation script to production after a quick review, prioritizing the restoration of snapshot functionality. The correct answer is D. Immediately deploy a revised version of the automation script to production after a quick review, prioritizing the restoration of snapshot functionality. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the tension between immediate operational needs and long-term data integrity and compliance. The pressure to restore service quickly, coupled with the potential for significant business impact, can lead to shortcuts. However, bypassing established procedures for data handling and automation can introduce risks of data corruption, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance with regulatory frameworks governing data management and system changes. Careful judgment is required to balance the urgency of the situation with the imperative to maintain secure, reliable, and auditable systems. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves adhering to established change management and incident response protocols, even under pressure. This means documenting the issue, implementing a temporary fix that minimizes risk, and then proceeding with a planned, tested, and approved permanent solution. This aligns with best professional practices for system administration and automation, emphasizing a structured and auditable process. Specifically, in the context of data center virtualization and automation, this approach ensures that any changes made to the virtual environment or automation scripts are logged, reviewed, and validated, preventing unintended consequences and maintaining system stability. This methodical approach is crucial for compliance with general IT governance principles and any specific regulations that mandate audit trails and change control for critical infrastructure. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a quick, undocumented fix without proper testing or approval introduces significant risks. This bypasses essential change control processes, which are often mandated by IT governance frameworks and can be implicitly or explicitly required by regulations that demand system integrity and security. Such an approach can lead to data corruption, system instability, and security breaches, all of which have regulatory implications if they result in data loss or unauthorized access. Furthermore, it undermines the auditability of system changes, making it difficult to demonstrate compliance during an audit. Deploying a new automation script to address the issue without thorough testing in a staging environment is also a failure. Automation, while powerful, requires rigorous validation to ensure it performs as intended and does not introduce new problems. Unvalidated automation can lead to widespread, rapid, and potentially catastrophic failures across the virtualized infrastructure, violating principles of system reliability and potentially breaching service-level agreements or regulatory requirements for system availability. Ignoring the issue and hoping it resolves itself is a dereliction of duty. This approach not only fails to address the immediate problem, but also allows potential vulnerabilities or data integrity issues to persist, increasing the risk of future, more severe incidents. It demonstrates a lack of proactive system management and can lead to significant compliance failures if the underlying issue impacts data privacy, security, or operational continuity as defined by relevant regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first prioritizing incident containment and assessment. This involves understanding the scope and impact of the problem. Next, they should follow established incident response and change management procedures. This typically includes documenting the incident, proposing solutions, assessing risks, obtaining necessary approvals, implementing the solution in a controlled manner, often with rollback plans, and thoroughly testing the resolution. For automation-related issues, this includes testing in non-production environments before deployment. Maintaining clear and accurate documentation throughout the process is paramount for auditability and compliance. This structured decision-making process ensures that operational urgency does not compromise system integrity, security, or regulatory adherence. Question 3. Risk assessment procedures indicate that automated provisioning of virtual machines in the data center may inadvertently violate data residency requirements for sensitive customer data, a critical concern under U.S. federal data protection laws. Which of the following approaches best mitigates this risk while maintaining operational efficiency? Option A. Implementing automated validation checks within the provisioning workflow to ensure virtual machines are deployed in geographically compliant data center locations and configured according to data residency policies. Option B. Disabling automated compliance checks within the provisioning tools to accelerate the deployment of virtual machines, relying on downstream processes for remediation. Option C. Conducting periodic manual audits of deployed virtual machines to identify and rectify any data residency violations after provisioning is complete. Option D. Assuming that standard virtualization security configurations inherently satisfy all data residency requirements without explicit verification. The correct answer is A. Implementing automated validation checks within the provisioning workflow to ensure virtual machines are deployed in geographically compliant data center locations and configured according to data residency policies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center virtualization and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and operational efficiency with the imperative of regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in ensuring that automated provisioning and management processes do not inadvertently introduce security vulnerabilities or violate data residency requirements, which are critical under U.S. federal regulations governing data handling and privacy. The pressure to deliver services quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass necessary compliance checks, creating significant risk. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves integrating compliance checks directly into the automation workflows. This means that before any virtual machine or network resource is provisioned or modified, automated scripts or tools must verify that the configuration adheres to established security policies and data residency mandates. For instance, if the organization handles protected health information. 5. Under HIPAA, the automation must ensure that the virtual machine is deployed in a data center location compliant with HIPAA and that appropriate access controls and encryption are applied. This proactive, compliance-as-code strategy ensures that regulatory requirements are met by design, rather than being an afterthought. It aligns with the principles of security and compliance by design, which are foundational to robust data center operations and regulatory adherence in the U.S. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on manual post-deployment audits. This is a reactive measure that fails to prevent non-compliant deployments. By the time a manual audit identifies a violation, sensitive data may have already been exposed or mishandled, leading to potential regulatory penalties and reputational damage. This approach is ethically and regulatorily unsound, as it does not demonstrate due diligence in protecting regulated data. Another incorrect approach is to disable or bypass compliance checks within automation tools to speed up deployment. This directly contravenes the spirit and letter of U.S. data protection regulations, which mandate robust controls. Such actions represent a conscious disregard for legal obligations and ethical responsibilities, creating a high risk of non-compliance and severe consequences. A third incorrect approach is to assume that generic virtualization security features are sufficient without specific validation against applicable U.S. regulation. While general security is important, specific regulations like HIPAA, PCI DSS, or SOX have detailed requirements that generic features may not fully address. Failing to tailor security and compliance measures to the specific regulatory landscape is a failure of professional responsibility and a direct path to non-compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals in data center virtualization and automation must adopt a risk-based, proactive approach to compliance. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the data being processed, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare data, PCI DSS for payment card data, SOX for financial data. The decision-making process should prioritize integrating compliance controls into the core of automation and virtualization design. This means treating compliance not as an add-on, but as an intrinsic requirement of the automated processes. When faced with pressure to expedite deployments, professionals must advocate for maintaining compliance integrity, explaining the severe risks and penalties associated with noncompliance. The framework for decision-making should be: does this automated action comply with all applicable U.S. regulations? And if not, how can it be modified to do so without compromising security or operational integrity? Question 4. The efficiency study reveals that the automated deployment of virtual machines is experiencing an average delay of 45 minutes per deployment, impacting the agility of development teams. This delay is attributed to a series of sequential validation steps within the existing automation workflow that are not optimized for parallel execution. Considering the need for rapid resolution while maintaining operational integrity and compliance with data center operational guidelines, which of the following actions best addresses this process optimization challenge? Option A. Allocate additional compute resources to the automation orchestration server to increase its processing power, assuming the delay is due to server overload. Option B. Rely on senior engineers to manually intervene and accelerate specific validation checks when urgent deployments are required, without formalizing this process. Option C. Immediately implement a script to bypass several of the sequential validation steps in the production environment to expedite VM deployments, with a plan to review the bypass steps later. Option D. Re-architect the automation workflow to identify and execute independent validation steps concurrently, followed by rigorous testing of the modified workflow in a staging environment before production deployment. Correct answer is D. Re-architect the automation workflow to identify and execute independent validation steps concurrently, followed by rigorous testing of the modified workflow in a staging environment before production deployment. Explanation: the efficiency study reveals a significant bottleneck in the automated provisioning of virtual machines within the data center. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts service delivery timelines, resource utilization, and potentially the organization's ability to meet service-level agreements, SLAs. The pressure to resolve this quickly without compromising security or compliance adds layers of complexity. Careful judgment is required to balance speed with adherence to established operational procedures and regulatory mandates. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven investigation. By analyzing the existing automation workflows, identifying specific points of failure or inefficiency, and then implementing targeted improvements with thorough testing and validation, the team ensures that the solution is robust and sustainable. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and operational excellence, which are implicitly expected in regulated environments. Furthermore, documenting these changes and their impact contributes to audit trails and knowledge management, crucial for compliance and future troubleshooting. An incorrect approach that involves bypassing established change control procedures to implement a quick fix is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes regulatory requirements for change management, which mandate documented approvals, risk assessments, and rollback plans. Such actions introduce significant security vulnerabilities and operational risks, potentially leading to system instability or data breaches. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on increasing hardware resources without addressing the underlying automation logic, represents a failure to perform root cause analysis. This is inefficient, costly, and does not resolve the core process optimization issue, potentially leading to recurring problems and noncompliance with resource management policies. A third incorrect approach, relying on tribal knowledge or undocumented scripts for remediation, is ethically and regulatorily unsound. It creates a single point of failure, hinders knowledge transfer, and makes the environment difficult to audit or maintain, violating principles of transparency and accountability. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the problem statement and its business impact. This should be followed by a thorough analysis of potential solutions, evaluating each against established operational procedures, security policies, and regulatory requirements. Prioritizing solutions that offer a sustainable fix, are well documented, and minimize risk is paramount. Collaboration with relevant stakeholders, including security and compliance teams, is essential throughout the process to ensure all requirements are met. Question 5. Compliance review shows that a new automated provisioning workflow for virtual machines in the data center was deployed without undergoing the standard security review and change management approval process, citing urgent business requirements for faster service delivery. The automation team asserts that the workflow was thoroughly tested in a development environment and is secure. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure ongoing compliance and operational integrity? Option A. Instruct the automation team to document their testing procedures and submit them to the compliance team for a retrospective review within the next quarter. Option B. Grant a temporary waiver for the workflow's use, contingent on the automation team providing daily status reports on its performance and security metrics to the operations manager. Option C. Immediately halt the use of the new workflow, initiate a full security and compliance audit, and reinstate the formal change management process for its re-evaluation and potential redeployment. Option D. Allow the workflow to continue in production while the automation team conducts a post-deployment risk assessment and documents their findings for future reference. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt the use of the new workflow, initiate a full security and compliance audit, and reinstate the formal change management process for its re-evaluation and potential redeployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between rapid deployment of new services and the stringent requirements for data integrity and security mandated by regulatory frameworks governing data center operations. The pressure to innovate and deliver new functionalities quickly can lead to shortcuts in validation and testing, which, if not managed properly, can result in non-compliance. Careful judgment is required to balance the business need for agility with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant infrastructure. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for change management, directly aligning with the principles of robust data center governance. By involving security and compliance teams early in the design and implementation phases, potential risks are identified and mitigated proactively. This ensures that new automation workflows adhere to established security policies and regulatory mandates, such as those related to data privacy and operational resilience, preventing potential breaches or audit failures. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining trust and avoiding penalties. An incorrect approach that bypasses formal change control and security reviews introduces significant regulatory and ethical failures. It demonstrates a disregard for established governance procedures designed to protect sensitive data and ensure operational stability. This can lead to violations of data protection laws, such as those requiring due diligence in data handling and security, and can also breach internal ethical codes that mandate responsible technology deployment. Furthermore, it undermines the principle of accountability by creating a situation where responsibility for any subsequent issues becomes unclear. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on the automation team's self-assessment without independent validation is professionally unacceptable. This fails to acknowledge the inherent biases that can exist within a team focused on development and deployment. It bypasses the critical oversight function that independent review provides, which is essential for identifying blind spots and ensuring objective adherence to compliance standards. This can lead to subtle but critical security vulnerabilities or policy misinterpretations that only become apparent during an audit or, worse, after a security incident. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape, a commitment to establish change management protocols, and a collaborative approach involving all relevant stakeholders, including security, compliance, and operations teams. Professionals must advocate for processes that embed security and compliance from the outset, rather than treating them as afterthoughts. This involves risk assessment, impact analysis, and thorough testing before any changes are implemented in a production environment. Prioritizing transparency and documentation throughout the lifecycle of any automation project is paramount. Question 6. Investigation of an automated data migration script designed to move sensitive customer data between virtualized environments has revealed that the script, while functional, has not undergone a formal security audit or validation against data privacy regulations. The development team is under pressure to complete the migration by the end of the quarter. Which of the following represents the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Modify the script to remove sensitive data fields before deployment, even if this impacts the integrity of the migration. Option B. Deploy the script immediately to meet the deadline, with a plan to conduct a security audit and remediation post-deployment. Option C. Halt the deployment, conduct a comprehensive security audit and data privacy validation of the script, and only proceed with deployment once all identified risks are mitigated and compliance is confirmed. Option D. Proceed with the deployment, but instruct the operations team to manually monitor all data transfers for any anomalies. The correct answer is B. Deploy the script immediately to meet the deadline, with a plan to conduct a security audit and remediation post-deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain data integrity and confidentiality within a virtualized data center environment, particularly when automation is involved. The challenge lies in balancing the efficiency gains of automation with the potential for unintended consequences or misuse of sensitive data. The pressure to deliver a solution quickly can create a temptation to bypass established security and validation protocols, which is a common pitfall in fast-paced IT projects. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the automation solution not only meets functional requirements, but also adheres to all relevant data protection regulations and ethical standards. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough, documented, and validated testing process before deploying the automation. This aligns with best professional practices that emphasize risk mitigation and adherence to regulatory frameworks governing data handling and system security. Specifically, in the context of data center virtualization and automation, this means ensuring that any automated scripts or workflows that interact with or process sensitive data have undergone rigorous security reviews, functional testing, and compliance checks. This approach upholds the principle of least privilege, ensures data confidentiality and integrity, and demonstrates due diligence in protecting sensitive information, thereby complying with general data protection principles and industry best practices for secure automation. An incorrect approach that involves deploying the automation without comprehensive testing and validation poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. This could lead to data breaches, unauthorized access, or accidental data corruption, all of which are violations of data protection laws and ethical obligations. Specifically, failing to validate the automation's interaction with sensitive data could violate regulations requiring data minimization, purpose limitation, and robust security measures. Another incorrect approach, such as using production data for testing without proper anonymization or consent, directly contravenes data privacy regulations and ethical guidelines concerning the responsible handling of personal or confidential information. This demonstrates a disregard for data subject rights and organizational security policies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment. This includes identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the automation, evaluating the impact of these risks, and implementing appropriate controls. Professionals should always adhere to established change management processes, which typically mandate thorough testing, peer review, and approval before deployment. Furthermore, a strong understanding of the relevant regulatory landscape, including data privacy laws and industry-specific compliance requirements, is crucial. When in doubt, seeking guidance from legal, compliance, or security experts is a responsible and ethical step. Prioritizing security and compliance over speed is a fundamental tenet of professional IT practice. Question 7. What factors determine the scope and depth of a risk assessment for implementing new data center virtualization and automation technologies within a regulated environment? Option A. The number of virtual machines deployed and the complexity of the automation scripts used, without considering external threat landscapes. Option B. The perceived ease of implementation and the availability of off-the-shelf security solutions, irrespective of specific organizational risks. Option C. The current budget allocated for IT infrastructure upgrades and the vendor's marketing materials for the virtualization and automation solutions. Option D. The criticality of the data being processed, the potential impact of service disruption, and the specific compliance requirements applicable to the organization's industry. The correct answer is D. The criticality of the data being processed, the potential impact of service disruption, and the specific compliance requirements applicable to the organization's industry. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the implementation of new data center virtualization and automation technologies, while offering significant benefits, also introduces new attack vectors and potential vulnerabilities. A comprehensive risk assessment is crucial to identify, analyze, and prioritize these risks before they can be exploited. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the operational advantages of these technologies with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process that aligns with industry best practices and regulatory expectations for data security and IT infrastructure management. This includes identifying potential threats, e.g., unauthorized access to virtualized resources, automation script vulnerabilities, assessing the likelihood and impact of these threats, and developing mitigation strategies. Such an approach ensures that security is integrated from the design phase, rather than being an afterthought, and that resources are allocated effectively to address the most critical risks. This aligns with the general principles of risk management expected in IT environments, aiming to protect sensitive data and ensure business continuity. An incorrect approach would be to overlook the specific risks introduced by virtualization and automation. For instance, assuming that existing security controls are sufficient without a targeted assessment of the virtualized environment's unique attack surface is a failure. This could lead to regulatory noncompliance if data protection mandates are not adequately met. Another failure would be to focus solely on technical vulnerabilities without considering the operational and human factors that can contribute to risk, such as inadequate training for personnel managing automated systems. This can result in a false sense of security and leave the organization exposed to breaches. Prioritizing cost savings over a thorough risk assessment, or delaying the assessment until after implementation, represents a significant ethical and professional lapse, as it knowingly exposes the organization to potential harm and regulatory scrutiny. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the scope of the virtualization and automation implementation. This should be followed by a structured risk identification process, leveraging threat modeling and vulnerability analysis specific to the technologies being deployed. The assessment of likelihood and impact should be data-driven where possible, and mitigation strategies should be prioritized based on their effectiveness and feasibility. Regular review and updates to the risk assessment are essential as the environment evolves and new threats emerge. Question 8. When evaluating the implementation of a new automated provisioning workflow for virtual machines in a Cisco-centric data center environment, which approach best balances the need for rapid service delivery with adherence to security and operational best practices? Option A. Deploy the automation workflow with minimal testing, relying on the inherent security features of the Cisco UCS Director and Nexus platforms to mitigate any potential risks. Option B. Prioritize the automation of VM creation and configuration, assuming that the underlying infrastructure security settings will inherently protect the new virtual machines. Option C. Develop and test the automation workflow in a dedicated lab environment, incorporating security policy validation and compliance checks at each stage of the workflow design and deployment. Option D. Implement the automation workflow immediately to enable faster VM deployment and address any security or compliance concerns in a subsequent review. The correct answer is D. Implement the automation workflow immediately to enable faster VM deployment and address any security or compliance concerns in a subsequent review. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new virtualized services and the need for robust security and compliance within a data center environment. The pressure to deliver functionality quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass established security protocols and regulatory requirements, potentially exposing the organization to significant risks. Careful judgment is required to balance innovation with due diligence. The correct approach emphasizes a phased deployment strategy that integrates security and compliance checks at each stage. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that new virtualized services are not only functional, but also secure and compliant with relevant regulations. Specifically, for the 300-170 Implementing Cisco Data Center Virtualization and Automation exam, This implies adhering to established Cisco best practices for UCS Director, UCS Manager, and Nexus Data Center solutions, which inherently incorporate security and automation workflows. This approach minimizes the risk of introducing vulnerabilities or non-compliance issues that could lead to data breaches, service disruptions, or regulatory penalties. It fosters a culture of security by design and proactive risk management. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate deployment without thorough security validation would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could violate data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, though for this exam, we focus on general best practices and implied compliance within a Cisco framework by potentially exposing sensitive data. It also breaches ethical obligations to protect organizational assets and client information. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on automation without considering the underlying security configurations of the virtualized infrastructure, ignores the principle of least privilege and could lead to unauthorized access or control of critical resources. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to implement a secure and resilient data center environment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment and mitigation. This involves understanding the potential impact of any deployment on security, compliance, and operational stability. For implementing any new automation or virtualization feature, a thorough review of existing security policies, regulatory requirements, and Cisco's recommended best practices for the specific technologies being deployed is essential. A structured approach, such as a security impact assessment and a compliance checklist, should be integrated into the automation and deployment lifecycle. This ensures that all critical aspects are considered, leading to more secure, compliant, and reliable data center operations. Question 9. Quality control measures reveal that a new automated provisioning workflow for virtual machines in the data center is being developed with a tight deadline, and the team is considering skipping a detailed risk assessment phase to expedite deployment. Which of the following approaches best mitigates potential security and compliance issues in this scenario? Option A. Further detailed risk assessment until after the automated provisioning workflow has been fully deployed and is in production to minimize initial delays. Option B. Focus the risk assessment solely on the technical vulnerabilities of the virtual machine images, ignoring potential risks related to the automation scripts and human operational procedures. Option C. Rely on the security features and best practices documented by the vendor of the automation software, assuming they cover all potential risks. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts specific to the automated workflow and the virtualized environment, and integrate mitigation strategies into the design and implementation. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts specific to the automated workflow and the virtualized environment, and integrate mitigation strategies into the design and implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center virtualization and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and agility with robust security and compliance requirements. The pressure to deliver new services quickly can lead to shortcuts in risk assessment, potentially exposing the organization to significant vulnerabilities. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that risk assessment is not a perfunctory step, but an integral part of the design and implementation process, aligning with the organization's security posture and regulatory obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that considers the specific threat landscape, the impact of potential breaches on data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and the existing control mechanisms. This aligns with best practices in data center security and automation, where understanding and mitigating risks are paramount. For instance, in a U.S. regulatory context, frameworks like NIST SB 800-53 provide guidelines for security and privacy controls, which would inform a thorough risk assessment. The process should identify potential vulnerabilities in the automated deployment workflows, the virtualized infrastructure components, and the data being processed. It should also consider the likelihood of these vulnerabilities being exploited and the potential impact. This proactive approach ensures that security is built into the system from the outset, rather than being an afterthought, thereby minimizing the attack surface and ensuring compliance with relevant data protection regulations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely rely on vendor-provided security defaults without conducting an independent risk assessment. This fails to account for the organization's unique operational environment, specific data sensitivity, and the evolving threat landscape. Regulatory frameworks often mandate that organizations understand and manage their own risks, not just trust third-party assurances. Another incorrect approach is to defer risk assessment until after the automation solution is fully deployed and operational. This is a reactive and inherently risky strategy. It means that potential vulnerabilities are present in the production environment, increasing the likelihood of a security incident before any mitigation can be implemented. This violates the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, and can lead to significant compliance violations if sensitive data is compromised. A third incorrect approach is to focus only on technical risks, neglecting the human element and procedural risks. Automation introduces new operational procedures and potential for human error or malicious insider activity. A comprehensive risk assessment must encompass these aspects to be effective and compliant with regulations that often address personnel security and operational procedures. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to data center virtualization and automation. This involves a continuous cycle of identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks. The process should be integrated into the project lifecycle, from initial design to ongoing operations. When faced with pressure to accelerate deployment, professionals must advocate for the necessary time and resources to conduct thorough risk assessments. This requires clear communication of potential consequences and regulatory implications. Decision-making should be guided by established security frameworks and organizational policies, ensuring that all potential risks are considered and addressed proportionally to their impact. Question 10. Stakeholder feedback indicates a strong desire to accelerate the deployment of new virtualized services through automation. To meet this demand, a proposed automation solution will provision virtual machines, configure network connectivity, and deploy application stacks. However, concerns have been raised about ensuring that these automated deployments consistently adhere to established security baselines and regulatory compliance requirements without introducing delays. What is the most professional and compliant approach to implementing this data center automation solution? Option A. Integrate automated security policy validation and compliance checks directly into the CI/CD pipeline for the automation solution, ensuring that each deployment is verified against predefined security and compliance benchmarks before being finalized. Option B. Implement the automation solution with default security settings and broad access permissions to expedite the provisioning process, assuming that individual application teams will manage their specific security configurations post-deployment. Option C. Deploy the automation solution without any built-in security or compliance validation mechanisms, relying solely on manual post-deployment audits to identify and rectify any deviations from security baselines and regulatory requirements. Option D. Prioritize rapid deployment by enabling the automation solution to bypass detailed security configuration validation and compliance checks during the initial rollout, with the intention of addressing these later in a separate remediation phase. The correct answer is A. Integrate automated security policy validation and compliance checks directly into the CI/CD pipeline for the automation solution, ensuring that each deployment is verified against predefined security and compliance benchmarks before being finalized. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in data center virtualization and automation, balancing the immediate need for rapid deployment with the long-term implications of security and compliance. Stakeholders, driven by business objectives, often prioritize speed, which can lead to shortcuts that compromise established security protocols and regulatory adherence. The challenge lies in navigating these competing priorities, ensuring that the automation solution not only meets functional requirements, but also upholds the integrity of the data center environment and complies with relevant regulations. The pressure to deliver quickly can tempt engineers to bypass critical validation steps or implement less secure configurations, creating a professional dilemma. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation that integrates security and compliance checks at each stage of the automation workflow. This aligns with best practices for secure software development and deployment, often mandated by regulatory frameworks that require demonstrable control and auditability. By building security and compliance into the automation pipeline from the outset, the solution becomes inherently more robust and less prone to vulnerabilities. This proactive stance ensures that the deployed environment meets all necessary security standards and regulatory requirements, such as those related to data privacy and access control, without sacrificing the benefits of automation. It demonstrates professional responsibility by prioritizing risk mitigation and adherence to established governance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing automation without a robust validation framework for security configurations and compliance checks is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks deploying systems that are non-compliant with data protection laws, potentially leading to severe penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. It also creates an environment where security vulnerabilities can be easily exploited, as automated deployments might inadvertently introduce insecure settings. Deploying automation that relies on hard-coded credentials or overly permissive access controls is another critical failure. This directly violates principles of least privilege and secure credential management, which are fundamental to most data center security policies and regulatory mandates. Such practices increase the attack surface and make it easier for unauthorized individuals to gain access to sensitive data or critical systems. Adopting a move fast and break things mentality without a clear rollback strategy or incident response plan for automated deployments is professionally irresponsible and ethically questionable. It demonstrates a disregard for potential negative impacts on business operations and data integrity. In the event of an automated deployment failure or security incident, the lack of preparedness can lead to extended downtime, data loss, and significant financial and legal repercussions, failing to meet the duty of care expected of IT professionals. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing security and compliance throughout the automation lifecycle. This involves establishing clear policies and procedures for automated deployments, including mandatory security reviews, compliance audits, and comprehensive testing. A phased rollout with continuous monitoring and validation is crucial. Furthermore, fostering a culture of security awareness and continuous learning among the team ensures that potential risks are identified and addressed proactively. When faced with pressure to expedite deployments, professionals must advocate for adherence to established security and compliance protocols, clearly articulating the risks associated with shortcuts. Question 11. The assessment process reveals that a financial services organization is struggling to maintain consistent network segmentation policies across its on-premises data center, which is managed by Cisco ACI, and its public cloud deployments, which utilize native cloud security constructs. The current approach involves separate teams managing each environment, leading to policy discrepancies and potential security gaps. Which implementation strategy best addresses this challenge while adhering to data center security, best practices, and regulatory compliance? Option A. Integrate the public cloud security constructs directly into the on-premises ACI fabric through complex, custom scripting and manual configuration, without a centralized policy orchestration layer. Option B. Implement a unified, policy-driven network segmentation strategy that leverages a centralized management platform to enforce consistent security policies across both on-premises ACI and public cloud environments, ensuring uniform application of segmentation rules. Option C. Rely on the native security features of each environment independently, with each team responsible for configuring and maintaining their respective segmentation policies, and conduct periodic manual audits to identify discrepancies. Option D. Prioritize rapid deployment of new services in the public cloud by temporarily deferring comprehensive segmentation policy enforcement, with a plan to address it in a subsequent phase after initial rollout. The correct answer is B. Implement a unified, policy-driven network segmentation strategy that leverages a centralized management platform to enforce consistent security policies across both on-premises ACI and public cloud environments, ensuring uniform application of segmentation rules. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common implementation challenge in data center virtualization and automation, ensuring consistent and secure network segmentation across a hybrid cloud environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the agility and scalability benefits of cloud adoption with the stringent security and compliance requirements inherent in data center operations. Misconfigurations can lead to significant security vulnerabilities, data breaches, and non-compliance with industry regulations, impacting business operations and reputation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a unified, policy-driven approach to network segmentation. By leveraging a centralized management platform that enforces consistent security policies across both on-premises and cloud environments, it ensures that segmentation rules are applied uniformly, reducing the risk of human error and policy drift. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, fundamental to robust data center security and compliance. Adherence to Cisco's best practices for ACI, application-centric infrastructure, and its integration with cloud platforms, as covered in the 300-170 exam, is crucial for achieving this. An incorrect approach that relies on disparate, manually configured security policies for each environment is professionally unacceptable. This method introduces significant security gaps and increases the likelihood of misconfiguration. From a regulatory perspective, it fails to demonstrate due diligence in protecting sensitive data and maintaining a secure infrastructure, potentially violating data protection laws and industry-specific compliance mandates. The lack of centralized visibility and control makes auditing and incident response exceedingly difficult, further exacerbating compliance risks. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thorough security validation is also professionally unsound. While agility is important, it should not come at the expense of security. This approach can lead to the introduction of vulnerabilities that are difficult to detect and remediate later, creating long-term risks. Ethically, it represents a failure to uphold professional responsibility, to secure the environment, and protect the organization's assets and data. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment, prioritizing security and compliance from the outset. This includes understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the data being handled, defining clear segmentation policies based on business needs and security requirements, and selecting tools and technologies that enable centralized management and automation of these policies. Continuous monitoring, auditing, and regular review of segmentation configurations are essential to maintain security posture and compliance over time. Question 12. System analysis indicates that the current virtual machine provisioning process in the data center is experiencing significant delays, impacting the time to market for new applications. The IT operations team is under pressure to accelerate this process. Which of the following strategies best addresses this challenge while adhering to robust operational principles? Option A. Conduct a thorough analysis of the existing provisioning workflow. Identify key bottlenecks through performance metrics and user feedback, and then implement targeted automation and process refinements in a phased manner with rigorous testing. Option B. Immediately deploy a new, unproven third-party provisioning tool that promises a complete overhaul of the current system based on a single vendor demonstration. Option C. Instruct the operations team to manually expedite each provisioning request by skipping standard documentation and testing procedures to meet urgent deadlines. Option D. Implement a fully automated, self-service portal for VM provisioning that allows users to select from a predefined set of templates without any manual review or approval steps. The correct answer is D. Implement a fully automated, self-service portal for VM provisioning that allows users to select from a predefined set of templates without any manual review or approval steps. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new services with the imperative to maintain stability and compliance. The professional challenge lies in identifying and implementing process optimizations that yield tangible benefits without introducing undue risk or violating established operational procedures and potential regulatory requirements for change management and auditing. Even if not explicitly stated in the exam syllabus, the underlying principles of robust IT governance are implied. The correct approach focuses on a systematic, data-driven methodology for identifying and implementing process improvements. This involves leveraging automation tools to gather performance metrics, analyze workflows, and pinpoint bottlenecks. By prioritizing changes based on their potential impact and feasibility, and by implementing a phased rollout with thorough testing and validation, this approach ensures that optimizations are effective, sustainable, and minimize disruption. This aligns with best professional practices by promoting efficiency, reducing operational overhead, and enhancing service delivery, all while maintaining a controlled and auditable change process. An incorrect approach that bypasses systematic analysis and relies solely on anecdotal evidence or the loudest voice risks introducing unintended consequences. For instance, implementing changes without proper testing could lead to service outages, impacting business operations and potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs. Furthermore, a lack of documentation and clear rollback procedures makes it difficult to troubleshoot issues and can hinder future audits, creating a compliance risk. Another incorrect approach might involve over-automating without understanding the underlying processes, leading to brittle solutions that are difficult to maintain and adapt. This can result in increased technical debt and a false sense of efficiency. Professionals should approach process optimization by first establishing clear objectives and success metrics. They should then employ a combination of qualitative e.g., stakeholder interviews, and quantitative e.g., performance monitoring methods to understand current processes. Automation should be seen as a tool to enhance, not replace, human judgment and oversight. A structured change management process, including risk assessment, testing, and rollback planning, is crucial. Finally, continuous monitoring and feedback loops are essential to ensure that optimizations remain effective and to identify further areas for improvement. Question 13. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in latency for automated provisioning tasks within the data center, impacting the speed at which new virtual machines become available for deployment. Analysis of the automation workflow logs reveals that certain integration points with external management systems are taking significantly longer to respond than usual, but overall CPU and memory utilization on the automation controllers remains within normal parameters. Which of the following approaches is the most effective for optimizing the process and resolving the observed latency? Option A. Immediately scale up the resources, CPU, memory, of the virtual machines hosting the automation controllers to ensure they are not a bottleneck. Option B. Temporarily disable non-critical automation tasks one by one to observe if the latency for provisioning tasks decreases, indicating a resource contention issue. Option C. Analyze the detailed execution logs of the automation workflows, focusing on the response times of individual tasks and API calls to external systems, and correlate these with network latency and resource availability at the time of execution. Option D. Rely on user feedback regarding perceived slowness and prioritize troubleshooting based on the most vocal complaints, without deep technical analysis of the automation execution. The correct answer is C. Analyze the detailed execution logs of the automation workflows, focusing on the response times of individual tasks and API calls to external systems, and correlate these with network latency and resource availability at the time of execution. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, identifying and rectifying performance bottlenecks that impact application responsiveness and user experience. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of the observed latency without disrupting ongoing services or making assumptions that could lead to misconfiguration. A systematic, data-driven approach is crucial to avoid introducing new problems or exacerbating existing ones. The correct approach, focusing on analyzing the automation workflow logs and correlating them with resource utilization metrics, represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the process optimization objective of the 300-170 exam. By examining the automation's execution path, timing, and resource consumption, one can pinpoint specific steps or integrations that are contributing to the delay. This aligns with the Cisco framework's emphasis on understanding and improving the efficiency of automated data center processes. Furthermore, this method is non-intrusive, allowing for diagnosis without impacting production workloads, which is a key ethical and operational consideration in maintaining service availability. An incorrect approach that involves immediately increasing virtual machine resources without a clear understanding of the bottleneck is professionally unacceptable. This action is a shotgun approach that can lead to unnecessary costs, increased complexity, and potentially mask the true issue, making future troubleshooting more difficult. Ethically, it violates the principle of efficient resource management and could be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence in diagnosing the problem. Another incorrect approach, such as disabling certain automation tasks to see if performance improves, is also professionally unsound. While it might provide a clue, it risks disrupting critical business processes and could lead to security vulnerabilities or data inconsistencies if not carefully managed. This approach lacks a structured diagnostic methodology and could have unintended consequences, failing to meet the professional obligation of maintaining system integrity. Finally, an approach that relies solely on anecdotal user feedback without correlating it with system-level data is insufficient. While user experience is the ultimate goal, subjective reports lack the precision needed for effective root cause analysis in a complex automated environment. This approach fails to leverage the diagnostic tools and data available, representing a missed opportunity for accurate and efficient problem resolution. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Clearly defining the observed problem and its impact. 2. Gathering all relevant data, including performance metrics, system logs, and automation execution traces. 3. Formulating hypotheses about potential root causes. 4. Testing hypotheses systematically using non-disruptive methods. 5. Implementing targeted solutions based on confirmed root causes. 6. Verifying the effectiveness of the solution and monitoring for recurrence. Question 14. The control framework reveals that automated virtual machine provisioning is being implemented to accelerate service delivery. Which approach to risk assessment best aligns with the principles of secure and compliant data center operations in this context? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive, manual risk assessment of the automation, scripts potential impact on security and compliance only after the initial deployment of several virtual machines to gauge real-world performance. Option B. Integrate automated risk assessment checks and policy enforcement directly into the virtual machine provisioning workflow, ensuring that deployments adhere to predefined risk tolerance levels and security baselines. Option C. Rely on post-deployment security audits and penetration testing to identify and address any risks introduced by the automated provisioning process, assuming the automation itself is inherently secure. Option D. Prioritize the speed of virtual machine deployment above all else, deferring detailed risk assessment to a later phase when operational demands are less pressing. The correct answer is B. Integrate automated risk assessment checks and policy enforcement directly into the virtual machine provisioning workflow, ensuring that deployments adhere to predefined risk tolerance levels and security baselines. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in data center virtualization and automation, balancing the need for rapid deployment and agility with robust risk management. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the automation of virtual machine provisioning, while enhancing efficiency, does not inadvertently introduce or exacerbate security vulnerabilities. The pressure to deliver services quickly can sometimes lead to shortcuts in the risk assessment process, making it crucial for professionals to adhere to established frameworks and best practices. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it integrates risk assessment directly into the automation workflow, establishing clear risk tolerance levels and implementing automated checks and balances that align with these levels. The organization ensures that new virtual machine deployments are inherently secure and compliant. This proactive stance, mandated by general IT governance principles and often implicitly required by compliance frameworks, though not explicitly detailed in the 300-170 exam scope, the underlying principles of secure system design and operational integrity are universal, minimizes the likelihood of introducing risks that could lead to data breaches, service disruptions, or regulatory noncompliance. It fosters a culture of security by design within the automation process. An incorrect approach that bypasses or inadequately performs risk assessment before deploying automated VM provisioning is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a significant ethical lapse and a potential regulatory violation, as it demonstrates a disregard for due diligence in protecting sensitive data and ensuring system integrity. Such an approach increases the likelihood of deploying systems with known or unknown vulnerabilities, which could lead to security incidents. This directly contravenes the principle of responsible IT management, which requires a thorough understanding and mitigation of potential risks before implementing new technologies or processes. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the technical functionality of the automation without considering its security implications, is also professionally deficient. While the automation may successfully provision VMs, if it does not incorporate security configurations, access controls, or vulnerability scanning as part of the automated process, it creates a significant security gap. This oversight can lead to the deployment of insecure systems, making them easy targets for exploitation. This demonstrates a lack of holistic understanding of IT infrastructure management, where security is an integral component, not an afterthought. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the automated provisioning process. Next, assess the likelihood and impact of these risks. Based on the organization's defined risk tolerance, determine appropriate mitigation strategies. Crucially, these mitigation strategies must be integrated into the automation workflow itself, ensuring that security controls are applied consistently and automatically. Regular review and updates to the risk assessment and mitigation strategies are also essential to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the IT environment. Question 15. Operational review demonstrates that a core component of the data center's virtualization infrastructure is approaching its end-of-support (YOS) date within the next 6 months. This component is critical for the operation of several business-critical applications. The IT department has identified a modern, compatible replacement solution, but its full implementation requires significant architectural changes and a substantial budget allocation that is not currently approved for the current fiscal year. The current vendor offers an extended support contract, but at a premium cost and with limited patch availability. What is the most professionally responsible course of action to mitigate risks and ensure continued operational stability? Option A. Continue operating with the existing EOS software, relying on the vendor's limited extended support contract to address critical issues as they arise, and deferring any major upgrade decisions until the next fiscal year. Option B. Initiate a phased migration to the new virtualization platform, starting with a pilot program on non-critical workloads to validate the solution and refine the migration process, while simultaneously developing a detailed business case for full budget approval for the remaining workloads. Option C. Immediately halt all operations on the EOS component and force a rapid, full-scale migration to the new platform, accepting the potential for significant disruption and downtime to avoid any risk of using unsupported software. Option D. Postpone any decision regarding the virtualization infrastructure until a new budget is approved, assuming the current system will remain stable and functional indefinitely. Correct answer is B. Initiate a phased migration to the new virtualization platform, starting with a pilot program on non-critical workloads to validate the solution and refine the migration process, while simultaneously developing a detailed business case for full budget approval for the remaining workloads. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations where a critical virtualization component is nearing its end-of-support (YOS) date. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for operational stability and security with the long-term strategic goals of modernization and cost-effectiveness. The pressure to maintain uptime, avoid unplanned expenditures, and adhere to internal IT governance policies creates a complex decision-making environment. Furthermore, the potential impact on business-critical applications and the associated risks of using unsupported software necessitate a thorough and well-justified approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and phased migration strategy. This aligns with best practices for IT lifecycle management and risk mitigation. By initiating a pilot program with a subset of non-critical workloads, the team can validate the new platform's performance, identify potential integration issues, and refine the migration process before impacting production environments. This phased approach minimizes disruption, allows for iterative learning, and provides tangible data to support broader adoption. It also demonstrates due diligence in assessing and managing technical debt, ensuring compliance with internal security policies that often mandate the use of supported software. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining a secure and efficient data center infrastructure, directly supporting the principles of responsible IT asset management. Incorrect approaches analysis. Continuing to operate with the EOS software, even with extended support, presents significant regulatory and ethical risks. Unsupported software is a prime target for security vulnerabilities, and failure to patch these can lead to data breaches, service disruptions, and non-compliance with data protection regulations. This approach neglects the organization's duty of care to protect sensitive data and maintain service availability. Implementing an immediate, large-scale migration without prior testing or a phased rollout is also professionally unsound. This Big Bang approach carries a high risk of widespread failure, significant downtime, and potential data loss. It demonstrates a lack of risk assessment and planning, potentially violating internal IT governance policies that require controlled change management and impact analysis. Such an approach could lead to severe operational and financial repercussions and potentially damage the organization's reputation. Delaying the decision indefinitely, hoping for a future budget or a magical solution, is a failure of leadership and professional responsibility. It allows technical debt to accumulate, increasing the likelihood of an emergency, costly, and disruptive fix later. This passive approach fails to address the inherent risks associated with EOS software and can be seen as a dereliction of duty in proactive IT management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment, phased implementation, and stakeholder communication. This involves 1. Identifying the problem and its potential impact, EOS software, security risks, operational instability. 2. Gathering information on available solutions, their costs, benefits, and risks. 3. Developing multiple viable approaches, including phased migration, immediate replacement, or extended support. 4. Evaluating each approach against criteria such as risk mitigation, cost-effectiveness, operational impact, and alignment with strategic goals. 5. Selecting the approach that best balances these factors, often favoring a phased, risk-managed strategy. 6. Developing a detailed implementation plan including testing, rollback procedures, and communication strategies. 7. Continuously monitoring and adapting the plan as needed. Question 16. The evaluation methodology shows that the finance department is experiencing significant delays and potential inaccuracies in their monthly financial reporting due to manual data aggregation and reconciliation processes within the current virtualized data center environment. The IT team is considering several approaches to address this issue and improve overall data center automation. Which approach best balances the immediate operational needs of the finance department with the strategic goals of enhancing data center efficiency and automation? Option A. Implement a phased automation strategy that targets the specific manual reporting tasks within the existing virtualized infrastructure, focusing on data extraction, transformation, and loading ETL processes, while simultaneously planning for broader infrastructure automation initiatives. Option B. Defer any automation efforts until the finance department can fully define all future reporting requirements, which is estimated to take over a year, and then implement a comprehensive, end-to-end automation solution. Option C. Initiate a complete re-architecture of the entire data center virtualization platform, including a migration to a new hypervisor and storage solution, before addressing any specific departmental reporting issues. Option D. Deploy a bleeding-edge, multi-cloud automation orchestration tool that requires significant integration effort and extensive retraining of IT staff, without first validating its direct impact on the finance department's reporting workflow. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased automation strategy that targets the specific manual reporting tasks within the existing virtualized infrastructure, focusing on data extraction, transformation, and loading ETL processes, while simultaneously planning for broader infrastructure automation initiatives. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center virtualization and automation projects, balancing the immediate operational needs of a critical business function with the long-term strategic goals of infrastructure modernization. The stakeholder perspective is crucial here, as different groups will have varying priorities and risk tolerances. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective path forward that addresses the immediate pain points of the finance department, while also laying the groundwork for future scalability, security, and efficiency gains promised by automation. Careful judgment is required to avoid solutions that are merely tactical and create technical debt or hinder future innovation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased implementation that directly addresses the finance department's immediate concerns regarding reporting accuracy and timeliness. By focusing on automating existing manual processes within the current virtualized environment, it delivers tangible value quickly, builds trust with stakeholders, and minimizes disruption. This approach aligns with the principles of agile development and iterative improvement, allowing for continuous feedback and refinement. Furthermore, it leverages existing infrastructure and skills, reducing immediate capital expenditure and training overhead. This demonstrates a pragmatic and business-aligned approach to technology adoption, ensuring that automation serves a clear business purpose and delivers measurable benefits. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on a complete re-architecture of the entire data center virtualization platform, without addressing the finance department's immediate needs, would be professionally unacceptable. This would likely lead to significant delays, budget overruns, and a failure to deliver on the promised benefits in a timely manner. Such an approach could be seen as technically driven rather than business-driven, potentially alienating key stakeholders and undermining the project's credibility. It also carries a higher risk of disruption to ongoing operations, which is particularly sensitive for a finance department. Another incorrect approach that proposes implementing a complex cutting-edge automation solution without adequate planning, testing, or stakeholder buy-in would also be professionally unsound. This could result in a solution that is difficult to manage, integrate, or scale, leading to further operational issues and a loss of confidence. It fails to consider the organization's readiness for such advanced technologies and the potential for unforeseen complications. This approach prioritizes novelty over practicality and business value. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of stakeholder needs and business objectives. It requires a clear definition of project scope and deliverables, with a focus on delivering incremental value. A risk assessment should be conducted for each proposed solution, considering technical feasibility, operational impact, and stakeholder acceptance. Prioritization should be based on the potential for business impact and alignment with strategic goals. Finally, continuous communication and collaboration with all stakeholders are essential to ensure project success and manage expectations effectively. Question 17. The audit findings indicate a critical deficiency in network segmentation within the virtualized data center environment, posing a significant risk to sensitive data and potential noncompliance with data protection regulations. Considering the need to enhance security and meet regulatory mandates, which of the following strategies best addresses these audit findings from a stakeholder perspective? Option A. Deploy broad network segmentation using VLAN to isolate major application tiers, without implementing granular controls at the individual workload level. Option B. Focus solely on perimeter security enhancements, assuming that internal network segmentation is less critical given the existing firewall infrastructure. Option C. Maintain the current flat network architecture to avoid operational disruption and defer any network segmentation efforts until a future, more opportune time. Option D. Implement a comprehensive micro-segmentation strategy, defining granular security policies at the workload level, and automate policy enforcement through the virtualization and network fabric. Correct answer is D. Implement a comprehensive micro-segmentation strategy, defining granular security policies at the workload level, and automate policy enforcement through the virtualization and network fabric. Explanation. The audit findings highlight a critical gap in the organization's data center virtualization and automation strategy, specifically concerning the implementation of network segmentation for security and compliance. The challenge lies in balancing the operational benefits of a flat network for ease of management and rapid deployment against the stringent security and regulatory requirements that mandate granular control and isolation of sensitive data. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a deep understanding of both virtualization technologies and the specific regulatory landscape governing data protection and network security. A failure to implement appropriate segmentation can lead to significant security breaches, data exfiltration, and non-compliance penalties, impacting the organization's reputation and financial stability. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of micro-segmentation policies, leveraging the capabilities of the chosen virtualization platform and network fabric. This approach is best professional practice because it directly addresses the audit findings by enhancing security posture and ensuring compliance with relevant regulations. By segmenting workloads and defining granular access controls, the organization can significantly reduce the attack surface and limit the lateral movement of threats within the data center. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are foundational to robust security frameworks and often mandated by regulatory bodies. Furthermore, a phased approach allows for thorough testing and validation, minimizing operational disruption and ensuring that the implemented policies are effective and manageable. An incorrect approach of maintaining the existing flat network architecture, despite the audit findings, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This demonstrates a disregard for identified security risks and compliance obligations, potentially violating regulations that require adequate security measures to protect sensitive data. Ethically, it exposes the organization and its stakeholders to undue risk. Another incorrect approach, such as implementing broad, coarse-grained network segmentation without considering workload-specific requirements, is also professionally unacceptable. While it attempts to address segmentation, it can lead to operational inefficiencies, hinder application performance, and still leave critical vulnerabilities unaddressed due to a lack of granularity. This approach fails to meet the spirit of effective security and compliance, potentially leading to a false sense of security. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, a clear understanding of regulatory requirements, and a strategic planning phase. This includes engaging with stakeholders from security, operations, and compliance teams to define clear objectives and acceptable risk levels. The chosen technical solution must then be evaluated against these objectives, with a preference for approaches that offer granular control, automation, and auditability. Continuous monitoring and adaptation of security policies are also crucial to maintain an effective security posture in the face of evolving threats and regulatory changes. Question 18. The audit findings indicate a critical gap in network segmentation within the virtualized data center, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access and violating regulatory compliance mandates. The audit report specifically highlights that intervirtual machine traffic between different security zones is not adequately controlled, contrary to the established data protection policies. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to address this finding? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the virtual network architecture, identify specific traffic flows that violate segmentation policies, and implement granular firewall rules at the virtual network level to enforce the required isolation between security zones, followed by thorough validation. Option B. Immediately deploy a broad set of restrictive firewall rules across all virtual network segments to prevent any unauthorized inter-VM communication, regardless of the specific security zone or data sensitivity. Option C. Rely on the hypervisor's default security configurations for all virtual network interfaces, assuming they provide sufficient protection for inter-VM traffic. Option D. Prioritize patching all identified vulnerabilities within the virtual machines and their operating systems, as this is the primary concern raised by the audit. Correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the virtual network architecture, identify specific traffic flows that violate segmentation policies, and implement granular firewall rules at the virtual network level to enforce the required isolation between security zones, followed by thorough validation. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential misconfiguration in the network segmentation strategy within the virtualized data center. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts security posture, compliance with data protection regulations, and operational stability. The core challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment and resource utilization with the imperative of maintaining robust security boundaries, especially in a virtualized environment where inter-VM traffic can be easily overlooked. Careful judgment is required to identify the root cause of the segmentation gap and implement a solution that is both effective and compliant. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology. By first identifying the specific compliance requirements and then mapping them to the virtual network architecture, the team ensures that any remediation directly addresses regulatory mandates. This proactive stance, involving thorough documentation and validation against established security policies, is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and maintaining an auditable trail. This aligns with the principles of secure design and operational integrity expected in regulated environments. An incorrect approach that involves immediately implementing broad, restrictive firewall rules without a clear understanding of the traffic flows and compliance needs is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to unintended service disruptions, impacting business operations and potentially violating service-level agreements. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of thoroughness and a failure to consider the broader impact of technical decisions. From a regulatory perspective, such an approach might not adequately address the specific requirements of data segregation or access control mandated by relevant frameworks, leading to continued noncompliance. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on the hypervisor's default security settings without custom configuration, is also professionally deficient. While defaults can provide a baseline, they are rarely sufficient for meeting specific compliance obligations or addressing nuanced security threats in a complex virtualized data center. This approach risks creating security blind spots and failing to meet the least privilege principle, a fundamental tenet of secure system design and often a regulatory requirement. It indicates a failure to proactively engineer security into the environment. Finally, an approach that focuses on patching vulnerabilities without addressing the underlying segmentation issue is incomplete. While vulnerability management is critical, it does not rectify a fundamental architectural flaw in network segmentation. This could lead to a situation where even patched systems remain exposed due to inadequate isolation, representing a significant security and compliance risk. It demonstrates a reactive rather than a proactive security posture. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a structured approach. 1. Understand the requirements. Clearly define the compliance obligations and security policies relevant to the data center. 2. Assess the current state. Conduct a thorough audit and analysis of the existing virtual network architecture and traffic flows. 3. Identify the gap. Pinpoint the discrepancies between requirements and the current implementation. 4. Develop solutions. Propose remediation strategies that are technically sound, compliant, and minimize operational impact. 5. Implement and validate. Deploy the chosen solution with rigorous testing and validation to ensure effectiveness and compliance. 6. Document and monitor. Maintain comprehensive documentation and establish ongoing monitoring to ensure sustained compliance and security. Question 19. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of unauthorized access to sensitive data if the new automated provisioning system for virtual machines is deployed without adequate security validation. The operations team is eager to leverage the efficiency gains promised by the automation. What is the most appropriate course of action to mitigate this identified risk while still progressing with the implementation of the automated provisioning system? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive security review and penetration testing of the automated provisioning system in a staging environment before authorizing its deployment to production. Option B. Rely on existing network security controls to protect the sensitive data, assuming the automation system itself does not directly interact with it. Option C. Immediately deploy the automated provisioning system to production to capitalize on its efficiency benefits and address any security concerns that arise post-deployment. Option D. Implement the automated provisioning system with minimal configuration changes, assuming the vendor's default security settings are sufficient. Correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive security review and penetration testing of the automated provisioning system in a staging environment before authorizing its deployment to production. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new virtualized services and the need to maintain robust security and compliance within a data center environment. The risk matrix highlights potential vulnerabilities that, if unaddressed, could lead to service disruptions, data breaches, or non-compliance with industry standards and potentially regulatory requirements. Though specific regulations are not detailed for this exam, the principle of due diligence applies. Careful judgment is required to balance innovation with risk mitigation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for evaluating and implementing changes. This involves a thorough risk assessment, validation of the proposed automation solution against established security policies and operational best practices, and a phased rollout with clear rollback procedures. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT governance, ensuring that new technologies are integrated in a controlled manner that minimizes potential negative impacts. It demonstrates a commitment to operational stability and security, which are foundational to maintaining trust and service integrity. An incorrect approach that bypasses formal validation and testing, proceeding directly to production deployment based on perceived efficiency, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This demonstrates negligence in risk management, potentially violating internal security policies and industry best practices that mandate thorough vetting of new systems. It exposes the organization to unacceptable levels of risk, including security vulnerabilities and operational instability, which could have severe financial and reputational consequences. Such an approach disregards the principle of due diligence and could be seen as a failure to act in the best interest of the organization and its stakeholders. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical implementation of automation without considering its impact on existing security controls or compliance requirements is also professionally unacceptable. This indicates a lack of holistic understanding of data center operations and a failure to integrate security and compliance into the automation lifecycle. It risks creating new security gaps or inadvertently violating existing compliance mandates, leading to potential audit failures and regulatory penalties. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to change management. This includes 1. Identifying the proposed change and its objectives. 2. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment, considering technical, operational, security, and compliance aspects. 3. Evaluating potential solutions against established criteria, including security, scalability, and maintainability. 4. Developing a detailed implementation plan, including testing, rollback, and monitoring strategies. 5. Obtaining necessary approvals from relevant stakeholders. 6. Executing the plan in a controlled manner with continuous monitoring and validation. 7. Documenting all steps and outcomes for future reference and auditing. Question 20. The assessment process reveals that a financial services organization is implementing a new automated provisioning system for virtualized data center resources to accelerate application deployment. The system is designed to deploy virtual machines, VM, and associated storage based on predefined templates. However, the initial implementation prioritizes speed and template simplicity, with minimal explicit security or compliance validation steps embedded within the automation workflows themselves. The organization handles sensitive customer financial data, making compliance with regulations like SOX and PCI DSS paramount. Which of the following approaches best addresses the potential risks associated with this automation strategy? Option A. Implement a separate, standalone security scanning tool that runs periodically on the newly provisioned virtualized environments to detect vulnerabilities and compliance issues. Option B. Focus solely on optimizing the speed of the automation workflow, assuming that the underlying infrastructure security measures will inherently protect the data. Option C. Enhance the automation templates to include mandatory security configurations and compliance checks, such as encryption settings for storage and network segmentation rules, and integrate automated validation steps before VM and storage provisioning is finalized. Option D. Rely on the existing manual post-deployment audit process to identify and rectify any security or compliance deviations after the virtualized resources have been provisioned and are in use. The correct answer is C. Enhance the automation templates to include mandatory security configurations and compliance checks, such as encryption settings for storage and network segmentation rules, and integrate automated validation steps before VM and storage provisioning is finalized. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in data center virtualization and automation, balancing the immediate need for agility and cost savings with long-term security and compliance. The scenario is professionally challenging because the rapid deployment of virtualized resources, while beneficial for business operations, can inadvertently create security gaps or introduce configurations that violate established data governance policies. Careful judgment is required to ensure that automation efforts do not compromise the integrity or confidentiality of sensitive data, especially within the context of the Cisco 300-170 exam's focus on U.S. regulatory frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a security-first, compliance-aware methodology for automation. By integrating security and compliance checks directly into the automation workflows, organizations can ensure that new virtualized environments are provisioned in a manner that adheres to relevant U.S. regulations such as HIPAA for healthcare data, PCI DSS for payment card data, or SOX for financial reporting. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of breaches and audit failures, aligning with the ethical obligation to protect sensitive information and maintain operational integrity. Automation should augment, not bypass, established security and compliance controls. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed and efficiency without incorporating security and compliance validation would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the deployment of virtual machines with default, insecure configurations, or the storage of sensitive data in non-compliant locations, directly violating U.S. regulations like HIPAA or PCI DSS. Such an oversight could result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach that relies on manual post-deployment audits to catch compliance issues is also flawed. While audits are necessary, relying on them as the primary mechanism for compliance is reactive and inefficient. It fails to leverage the power of automation to prevent non-compliance from occurring in the first place, increasing the likelihood of undetected violations and the associated regulatory repercussions. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that emphasizes a shift-left approach to security and compliance within automation. This involves understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to the data being handled, identifying specific compliance requirements, and then designing automation workflows that inherently enforce these requirements. Continuous monitoring and automated remediation should be integral parts of the solution, rather than afterthoughts. The goal is to build secure and compliant infrastructure from the ground up, leveraging automation to scale these controls effectively.